This is Autoline After Hours with John McElroy and Gary Vasilash, episode 557 for May 20th of 2021. Will EVs have hockey stick growth? Watch Autoline After Hours live at Autoline.tv every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 12 p.m. Pacific. You can subscribe to this podcast for free by searching for Autoline in iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, solutions for your journey, and by Borg Warner, propulsion solutions that support a clean, energy-efficient world.
Hey, Gary.
John, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good, actually. How about yourself?
Tip top.
Tip top. All right. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Tip top of the day to you.
Thank you. Okay, so now 2019 seems like a very long time ago.
Because it was.
But it seems even longer. Okay.
Oh, yeah, because we had a century of COVID in between then and now.
Exactly right. All right, so this question has nothing to do with 2019 per se, except for the fact that in 2019, one of your favorite movies came out, and it has something to do with what happened today in 1964.
Oh, so, well, that had to be not today, huh? 1964. Gosh darn it, you stumped me again. What is it?
All right, so the movie, of course, Ford versus Ferrari.
Oh.
And today was the day that Enzo said, nope, you're not going to take my company over, which, of course, led to Henry Ford II saying, hey, I'm going to go racing and show him what Ford Motor Company's all about.
Yeah, he said he was going to kick his ass, to put it in polite terms.
To put it in Henry Ford II terms.
That's right. That's right. I think Enzo, manipulated this from the get-go just to get a bigger price out of Ferrari.
Could be. Well,
or get a better price for Ferrari, get it out of Fiat.
So yeah, well, I think they've done all right in the subsequent years. So it was probably a good move for them not to become part of the Ford Motor Company. But be that as it may, so this is sort of a special show. Last week we had a different show. This week is going to be another different show. I think this is going to be pretty exciting.
I can't wait to get going. So let's bring in our guests. And we've got Sam Fiorani from AutoForecast Solutions and Eric Noble from the CARLAB, and also Design Center, right, Eric?
Art Center College of Design.
Art Center. I was trying to figure out the ACCD, and being, dyslexic myself, I guess I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, nobody named Angus involved, but otherwise the AC part rings familiar, right?
That's right. Good joke for insiders who know cars.
All right, so one of the things that I want to investigate with you guys, and so Eric, Sam, you guys know all about this industry at a depth and a breadth that is in some ways breathtaking. And so one of the vehicles that John has mentioned on more than one occasion during the show is the Guang Mini EV, okay? And so this apparently was the best-selling plug-in electric vehicle in China in the month of January. And just to give a sense of how small this thing is, it's 114.8 inches long, 58.8 inches wide, 63.8 inches high, and weighs 1,466 pounds. Now, by contrast, the forthcoming Hummer EV pickup weighs 9,046 pounds, which means that it weighs 6 times what the Guangzhou or Guang or whatever weighs. Now, this vehicle has a motor that is a 17 horsepower motor. This is why I don't understand why John's so fascinated with this, because it only has 17 horsepower. It does have a top speed of 62 miles per hour and a range of up to 110 miles. Okay. So here's my question to you guys. Would an American buy a car like this? And If they would, why?
Have you seen a small car that sells well? I mean, the Smart didn't do well. We have a bunch of we've had attempts at cars of that size, and none of them have done particularly well. Even if you're going to sell it it sells $5,000 there. If you sold it for under $10,000 here, would this be the modern Yugo? Would it sell until somebody realized that it was not a Nissan Versa, which is $15,000? It's this is not an American market car. The top speed is just barely highway speed, and the range isn't that long. I'm sure that you said it was 1/5 the weight of the Hummer. I'm sure the Hummer would outsell it at least 5 times.
Yeah, I think Sam's exactly right. You go all the way back to the Isetta, even the Mini, for as famous as it was, or the Nash Metropolitan, or Sam mentioned, or one of you mentioned the Yugo. We in the States don't have a history of accepting small cars for our market, and I think it's also important to say there's probably not a single part. If you looked at the bill of materials on that vehicle, and I'll spare you me trying to pronounce it, Gary, but if you looked at the bill of materials for that vehicle, if we did a teardown, there's probably not a single part on that vehicle that you could validate for use in North America. And all jokes aside, I mean, Sam, you mentioned, highway travel, for instance, with that. For instance, you probably don't have wheel bearings on that vehicle that could run sustained at highway speeds in North America for 2 or 3 hours without burning up. Therefore, you don't have a spindle that's large enough. Therefore, you don't have a brake disc that's large enough. So even if you started with the tire tread, you wouldn't go very far before you started running into components that just at a component level wouldn't validate for North America. So A, North Americans don't want those sort of cars. B, you couldn't validate that for use in North America anyway. And C, it's a super good reminder that the global market is just as imminent as EV battery breakthroughs. Any day now, we're going to have global vehicles that are truly successful globally. And any day we're going to have that big breakthrough that's going to enable the hockey stick.
So I'm going to argue with you guys. Provide a different point of view of looking at this car. Number one, Gary, you said that it was the best-selling car in January. I will add, end in February, end in March, end in April. And why is it doing so well in China? Because it's so cheap. Sam, you said $5,000. I think the base price is actually $4,400. You can add on a few options and price it higher. They sell it with this wild palette of different colors, and it's become a hot thing amongst young people. And guess what? They're not taking it on the highway. Right. They're just zipping around in, crowded Chinese cities. And so I would say, this is built by Wuling, which is General Motors is almost a half ownership, I think, in that operation. If GM brought that car to the States and put it in Chevrolet dealerships, it would die within a week or two. But think back to when Honda first came to America with motorcycles. They wanted to have a motorcycle that competed with Harley Davidson. Because back when Honda came in the late 50s, Harley was the bike that you could buy, or maybe you could get a BMW or a Triumph or something like that. And they thought they had to go there. So interesting backstory. The people that Honda sent to California to figure out the American market were zipping around town on little Honda Cubs. And everywhere they went, people would ask them, wow, that is so cool. Where'd you get that thing? And it turned out that motorcycle buyers in the United States wanted nothing to do with the Honda motorcycle that they wanted to sell here. But they were very interested in the Cub. And Honda ended up selling them through sports outlets, not through motorcycle dealers. And the rest is history. And I would say, I don't know if the Hongguang would work in the United States or not, but I would not position it as a car that can go on the highway. In fact, I would reduce its top end speed to maybe 45 miles an hour. And I would not sell it through dealerships because they wouldn't know what to do with it. And I would go after a totally different audience, college campuses, gated communities, retirement communities, and the like, and see what I could do there. Because in one sense, it's a whole lot better than the glorified golf carts that are used in those communities. And who knows, you might find something new.
Well, John, NEVs are a pretty big segment, neighborhood electric vehicles. And if you do speed limit, there are places that they can be run. That market's consistent. The aging boomer population is going to be the biggest older population that North America has ever had. And so NEVs will be significant. That might be a play for them. It gets pretty tough, though, to do big numbers even there, because those vehicles tend to be bought and then held an awfully long time. So there's not the velocity that we have in the new car market. So NEVs are a growing segment. Could they do it there? Yeah, they might. It would be an interesting play, probably a lot better than those golf carts, to your point.
Yeah, but if they were to tackle the NEV market, then you have to compete with the established players that are already there, and you have to downgrade the car even further, because I believe that the limit on an NEV is like 25 miles an hour. So
it depends on the municipality, Sam.
But in order to get past MVSS.
Yeah, I know. You're right, Sam. So you degrade it. You could probably even cut the price even more. And guess what? The Guang at 43. What's an NEV cost? They're not $4,400. They're not 45. Tack on a couple of grand more.
Yeah,
that's what
right.
they cost.
Yeah.
They're overpriced club cars.
Yep, that's exactly right. So anyway,
John,
that's my argument. No,
John,
you're not going to sell.
They're actually going in the opposite direction in China, because they introduced the McElroy in April, which has a 27 horsepower motor. So obviously they're going for the tire burning over there.
Yeah, they're going to come out with a convertible version too. So I mean, their whole goal is to move upscale. But I'm just saying, I think there's an opening in the market right now for micro mobility that's not being addressed yet. And, because as new cars and even used cars get priced higher and higher, too many people are being left behind.
Eric,
Which is a significant issue.
Eric, is there the possibility that rather than being sold as a car, this could be sold as some sort of fashion accessory?
If we want to talk about sort of things that are coming up into the market and may ultimately compete with the traditional OEMs, and I'm not going to try to divert us to this today on a long-term basis, but subject for another time is UTVs, right? Side-by-sides. Because side-by-sides, if we looked at these, Polaris RZRs, et cetera, you can make an argument those are one of the largest single vehicle segments in North America today, and they're just about as capable as our on-road cars, and they're far more capable than things like Jeep Wranglers. And I'll bet you anything, if you were at Jeep today, you measurably feel the competition from things like RZRs and other side-by-sides. So yeah, there are vehicles that will come from below and compete with our current car makers. I'm not sure this particular vehicle we've been discussing from China is going to be it. Although, John, I think you must have one on order.
No, I don't. But Gary or Eric, you raise a great question. Should Jeep do a side-by-side?
I don't know whether Jeep should do one or not, because Jeep doesn't have the acumen to build that way. Remember,
so partner with somebody, partner with Polaris or whatever.
Yeah, I mean it's a huge segment,
and go electric.
Average transaction prices are high.
Yeah, go electric. Get out ahead of the curve. What do you think, Sam?
That's a great point, because when you buy a Jeep, you buy into the whole Jeep lifestyle, and so if you were to put in side-by-sides or mini bikes or something else that you could tack into there, ski-doos, anything like that, it becomes the whole lifestyle. BMW tried this years ago with skateboards. Remember that?
Yeah.
Just getting everybody into the whole package, buying, especially Jeep buyers. Jeep buyers like to upscale their car, putting all kinds of trim on their Wrangler. You sell anything with Jeep on it. You put a Jeep logo on shirts, they sell like mad. Jackets, you can definitely sell side-by-side that way.
Sam, I want to ask you, you mentioned the Nissan Versa, which I see as a starting MSRP of $14,730. Now, the only car that I could find that's cheaper than that is the Chevy Spark, which is at $13,400. Okay. Can OEMs make any money off things like that?
Well, the first problem is they're cars, and Americans don't buy cars. So that's the first problem we have, that when you move up to a $20,000 crossover, that's where the market is, or at least starting to be. They can make money on them because these are global cars. These are not built just for North America. The Versa is sold in dozens of countries, and the Spark is offered in a number of countries as well. These are not cars dedicated to the North American market. If they were, there's no way they would sell them here. It's just, it couldn't be done.
Yeah, I don't think it's possible today to sell a vehicle below $16,000 and probably make a profit. If you think about the bill of materials that's required for a road legal vehicle in North America, that BOM is probably somewhere around $10,000, right? And then if you put in the operational costs and some form of payback, I didn't say profit, just some sort of payback on the initial investment, we probably need to be seeing cars at north of $16,000 before we can say the OEM's making any potential profit on the vehicle. So when you talk about vehicles down there like Versa, they exist for only two reasons. It's either a cafe play or somebody's fantasy that that's how you're going to bring entry-level buyers to the brand.
Yeah.
All right. So fantasy aside, I mean, is this something that is valuable? I mean, John was mentioning that the car companies seem to be pricing many people out of the new car market, right? By going to the $20,000 CUV that Sam mentioned. And so the question becomes, okay, how do you get somebody into your brand if they've got massive student debt sitting there?
That's a huge problem. It's content that's driving it, right? So Gary, we can say that together, yes, the OEMs are pricing themselves out of the market. If you look at the transaction prices for cars, all cars sold in North America in any given year, that's a bell curve, right? But the bottom end of that bell curve is used units. So as an industry making new cars, we've always had this problem, right? We're only selling to part of the bell curve, right? We're only selling traditionally on the new car side or new vehicle side, we only sell to the top half of households by income in North America. And that's always been true. The problem is, as you're stating, has gotten worse because we're driving more content into those vehicles. And principally that content is two types: safety and ADAS, advanced driver assistance systems. And those are adding labor hours to the assembly builds, somewhere around 5 hours. We are up on average now, labor into a vehicle from 10 years ago. We're back up over 30 hours per vehicle. And that's ADAS content. And that content is expensive. So sensors are expensive. Camera systems are expensive. Those processing units are expensive. Airbags are expensive. So either through regulatory pressure or through pressure for driver assistance systems, we as consumers are driving up the price of the vehicles we buy because we want that content. So what's average price these days, Sam? Are we at almost $35,000?
We're $40,000 for a new car.
Yeah, and that's content, guys. Content.
Right. To your point, the entry-level vehicles are used cars, and that's fueling a certified pre-owned. So
I would add one other thing too. As we price households out of the market, we're getting rid of people who would have bought lower price cars, and that automatically makes the average price higher.
Yeah, that part's true too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. When you look at the sales of vehicles per capita in the United States, from 1970, from 76, they went from 60 cars per thousand. It's down below 50 now. So the price, while the volumes are still pretty high, the population is going up. So we're losing those vehicles that would have been sold a number of years ago. We would have been over 20 million new vehicles if we were still selling up there.
Yep. And we it's also reflective of a wider societal challenge that we have, particularly in America, which is our middle, right, which traditionally has supported our industry, our middle is shrinking. And we, to Sam's point, we've been sheltered in real number terms from that shrinkage because the total population is growing. But our ability to sell on a percentage basis to that total population is diminishing as the middle class diminishes.
Yeah.
Our
Hey,
numbers are still up, but
yeah, sorry, Eric, I got to jump in. We got to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be back because I know Gary's got a bunch of other good questions we got to get into. All right, we're back.
Okay, so this sort of segues from the last segment, and Eric, you were talking about the amount of content that is going into vehicles for ADAS and safety. Well, the safety part, I don't think people are demanding safety. I think that they would like a nicer radio because they never think they're going to get into an accident. So if you're given a choice, they're going to go for the audio system. Be that as it may, however, it seems to me that part of the cost that's being driven into vehicles is this sort of arms race that the OEMs are having between one another, saying we're going to have higher technology in our vehicles, higher and higher and higher. And as they face Wall Street, they want to be perceived as being tech companies. Okay, so it goes back to what Scott McNealy then at Sun said, that cars are going to basically become computers on wheels, which of course they have. So my question to you guys is, are car companies going to be successful becoming tech companies, or as we're seeing companies like Foxconn get involved with manufacturing things and working with companies like Geely and Fisker, whether they're going to become car companies?
Sam?
Yeah. Oh yeah, the tech side is propping up the stock prices at the moment with Ford and GM pitching themselves as tech companies and not legacy automakers. Legacy automakers, the stock market doesn't care about. They don't want to put any money into that. They want something cutting edge. They want you to be a Tesla. They want you to be an Apple. They want you to be somebody along those lines. And pitching that way is purely a stock play. They want to make sure that they boost their stock prices, and it's worked this year. Their stock prices are up. But the vehicles are becoming more and more techy. By making them EVs, this is what the stockholders think that the industry is going towards. So they have to be there, and they have to push that side of the product.
Yes, but never the twain shall meet. I mean, let's be blunt, right? Foxconn's chances of successfully competing on a manufacturing and assembly basis with River Rouge are zero. And Ford's chances of ever being a tech company are exactly zero. Horses for courses, guys. They're two very, very different industries. I mean, good for Mary and company if she's able to, in the grand tradition of just get to the podium and just say whatever you need to say. If she's able to buoy her stock price by trying to reposition GM nominally as a tech company, good, I suppose. It's been good for share price. And Tesla has been the example. But in the end, these are manufacturers that fold metal and assemble it together to create vehicles. And that is an exceedingly different business than anything that Foxconn does. And there's just about no transferable skills between the two.
I totally agree with you, Eric, but I'd add this, and I don't know if they're going to be able to pull it off or not. But Ford and GM and Mercedes and Toyota and the rest of them want to transition into companies that go from transactional to having an ongoing relationship. As you know, that's all the buzzword right now. So in the present model, you sell somebody a car, you lease somebody a car. If they bought it, they disappear for 8 years plus. If they lease it, they don't show up for another 3 years. But via over-the-air updates, they're hoping, they're praying, they got their fingers crossed, the traditional automakers do, that they can get you to cough up money, hopefully every single month.
Yeah, how'd that work out for satellite radio, John?
Well, like I said, I'm not saying that this is going to work, but they're all trying it. They all hope it's working. And so far, Tesla has made it work to a degree. Now, whether the rest of them can make it happen is still yet to be determined. But if they can make somewhat of a transition, that doesn't make them tech companies, but it does change their business model to having much more rapid and ongoing revenue growth.
It's hard to blame them, right? I mean, the auto industry really just exists in the service of sunk capital, right? It's $1 billion for a plant, $1 billion for an engine family, $750 million for the gearbox, and $1 billion for the platform. And if you're lucky, you can pay that off in 5 years, right? It's a terrible business to be in. So you can't blame them for wanting to be out of that business. And right, good for them. They recognize that that's a lousy business to be in, but that's not the same as saying it can therefore happen. It's not going to happen. And consumers have no interest in making ongoing payments to a car maker or to Tesla for that matter. Tesla got a little bit of first mover advantage with over-the-air updates, but consumers don't have any interest in being billed monthly for anything about their automobile. And frankly, they don't want a relationship with the car company. They don't really want a relationship with any commercial enterprise. If we force them to do it, they'll do it. But how many of us like the updates that come to our laptops? Yeah, right. They're a pain in the rear. How many of us like the updates that come to our phones? They're a pain. We put it off. Save it for later. Save it for later. So, but suddenly I'm going to pay for that in my car? No. Automakers are going to be obliged to do over the air because that's how they're going to avoid warranty costs. That's how they're going to download new software for either fuel systems or battery management. That's how they're going to manage their safety compliance. Ultimately, it's probably how they're going to manage their CAFE and their EPA emissions compliance is all over the air. Great. But getting consumers to pay for it? Nope. Cost of business.
So it's a revenue save, not a revenue stream.
Yeah, it lowers expenses, Gary. I mean, look, recalls are exceedingly expensive. If you can use OTA to avoid a portion of that, right? Updates are exceedingly expensive, right? All of that sort of stuff that's cost that can be saved if I use OTA. But are customers willing to pay to upgrade a system? Rarely.
I've been waiting for the auto industry to take the tack that the phone companies have, where you get the phone for free, but you pay for the service. If they could tack in enough services in the car, then they could give you the car for free, and you're paying $600-700 a month in services in the car.
But Sam, what would be some of the services that someone would be willing to pay? I mean, that's serious money.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely serious money. But once you get satellite radio and maybe a purchase services or something like that, you've run out of stuff. You're not gonna pile in $700 worth of services in there.
Exactly right.
But the idea is a great one if you could do it. How much do you spend on a phone every 2-3 years, and it all gets rolled up into your monthly bill. But if you could do that into your car, if you could roll the insurance, the car payment, the whatever else, if the electricity, if it was an electric vehicle, whatever else you got in there, if you could roll that all up into one payment and not make it the car payment, the car comes for free, but I get to pay for all these services. You could possibly do that. You're not going to do a high-end Tesla that way, but maybe you could get the low-end buyers to want to upgrade regularly because their electric vehicle needs the newest and latest thing. It comes in purple now, so I got to get the new one so I can pay the $400 a month to upgrade my car.
Isn't this sort of the model that the Link & Co. company has, where basically you're not owning the car, you're paying a fee for the car, and they're wrapping all that stuff in? And I think isn't Volvo sort of going down that road, since they are both owned ultimately by Geely? Or am I just making this all up?
That's the move that they've been trying for all these mostly high-end companies, trying to get you to switch between your Porsches or your Volvos or your Cadillacs. They just haven't taken off. No one's going to rent a car for the rest of it's sold as a lease, but it's a rental. You're renting the car for 2, 3, 4 years. No one's going to do that, pay a little extra or a lot extra in the case of these guys, in order to be able to switch between Cadillac models or Porsche models. Porsche is the only one who's actually been able to do it relatively successfully.
Yeah. Gary, Sam raises a really good point, which is, if I think about leasing, let's think about traditionally who's really, really good at that. BMW. You can make the argument that the BMW buyer has been doing for a long time what we're talking about. They're just renting, or they're paying a monthly fee in order to be in a 3 Series. So if it costs me $320 a month to be in a 3 Series on a 36-month lease, and BMW contacts me or my dealer every time at 29 or 30 months and just says, hey, you're coming to the end of this. How about we just trade you straight across and keep your payment the same, show up one day, and we'll just put you in the new vehicle. It's already akin to a service model. BMW is still selling them the assembled metal, right, in the form of the new 3 Series. But for that buyer, they're just paying a $300 to $400 a month fee to consistently be in a BMW of a certain size. And that really is a very good model, and it's worked very well for BMW. But we never can uncouple that from the physical product, right? And I think the automakers would like to get to where they can uncouple that and get their buyers to pay them on a regular basis for things that are more ephemeral. And we just don't, to Sam's point, we don't have any historical example of that ever working.
Well, to your point of, go ahead, John.
I would agree with you guys completely on this. In fact, Audi just came out this week with a package where for only $895 a year, you can use the navigation system in the car, or you can buy it on a monthly basis for only $89. What a deal.
Meanwhile, we all have Waze on our phone, and it's far better.
Ways better, right?
Right.
But here's the one area where I do think that the subscription services could work, and that's on the commercial side. And if you're able to offer fleets services that's going to pay off for them, where they're going to see an ROI on it, that's the one area where I do think that this could work.
The fleet business right now, John, looks the most promising for a lot of new technologies. To the extent new technologies lower operational costs, right, or lower driver costs, and these new technologies promise both, fleets are interested, right? Right now, GE Capital or their competitors capture a lot of that money by providing those services to fleets. Could the OEs do it? Potentially. There are OEs, by the way, that have fleet as a huge leg of their business. I think Ford probably more successfully than anyone in North America has a tremendous business on the fleet side. Gary, if only Ford could position their fleet business somehow as tech, right? maybe they'd get somewhere. But so far, they don't get much credit for that. They make a lot of profit there, and they have very little competition. And the fleet business does want to move toward a monthly payment model. Fleets don't want to have the capital on their books, John. Agreed.
Right.
You know, it's interesting, Eric, that you used BMW as an example, because it brought to mind, which I think is even more egregious than John's example of the Audi premium service for navigation. Because I did look to see what it would cost you if you go to Costco and you can buy a Garmin system that you can talk to. I mean, it's just like really deluxe, and it's far less expensive, but be that as it may. But remember when BMW was going to try to charge people for CarPlay as a service?
Remember when they were talking about charging you for your heated seats?
Right. Yeah. So basically, a lot of the stuff that they're talking about, I mean, it's just like it may sound good in the boardroom, but when people are at a dealership or people are at their kitchen table figuring out what their payments are going to be, I'm not so sure that this is a very good idea. But we'll see.
Haven't you guys already complained about the Cadillac monthly payment on their self-driving system?
Yeah.
True. Yeah.
And
true
Ford.
points.
Yeah.
What else you got, Gary?
Anytime we have car makers getting a monthly payment for something like that, Sam, it's frictional, right?
Yeah.
There's some first mover advantage, and once everybody offers it, your ability to charge for that is gone.
Yeah, but when you give it to them for free and don't tell them what the price is going to be, that's a little shady.
All right. So at the top of the show, John teased it saying, okay, will EVs have hockey stick like growth? Last night, people are probably watching this and saying, are these guys living in a cave or something? Ford came out with the F-150 Lightning, the official introduction, which I thought was interesting, in the context of talking about tech and subscriptions and so on, that one of the words that they used, I think the first word when they're describing what it is, the smartest F-150 ever, because I know that that's what people are interested in when they're buying a pickup truck, having a smart one. Okay, Sam, you've got the numbers, and Eric, I'm sure you've got the sense of this. I mean, what's going on with EVs? I mean, I was looking at the Experian numbers, and they said in Q1 there were like 99,000 electric vehicles sold, of which 41,000 were Model Ys. Okay, I mean, so obviously Tesla is the electric car industry right now. Is there going to be any possibility for things like the F-150 Lightning to change this?
Not in the short term, but you're going to need better charging infrastructure. You're going to need better batteries. You're going to need a lot of things before the average buyer is going to say, I can replace my IC engine with this EV. It's just not going to happen overnight. And it's going to take years of different pieces of that puzzle being put into place before you can. I was just having a discussion today about the fact that you don't know where the charging stations are unless you have an app. It's not like a gas station where you turn the corner and there's a gas station on every corner. Plus the fact that the charging station is going to charge you 4 times, 5 times what it costs you at home. So am I really going to want to travel cross country when it's going to cost me 4 times as much money as it does back home to just drive around town? An ICE still makes sense when you're driving long distance, and Americans like to be able to drive long distance. So there's another strike against you. I need to be able to make sure that in a sitting, I can drive 1,000 miles without having to park the car for 6 hours to get enough charge to go another 400 miles. The hockey stick growth isn't there in the foreseeable future. We have one particular graph that we show in a lot of our presentations. We have been very conservative about the growth of EVs. And if you take Tesla out of the situation, we're on par because EVs have not had any growth. It's all been Tesla. There are a lot more players now, and all those players are boosting the volume, but each one of them isn't profitable on their own. And so there's a lot of little people putting a volume in there, and you're not going to have additional Teslas along the way to keep that volume up. The hockey stick growth is all speculation. People who have said, this is where we're going to be, and here's where we are now. So there's the connection between them. And if this is where you're going to be, it's going to be over here somewhere. It's going to be a few years later than you expect. And so the hockey stick growth isn't going to be there. It's going to be a gradual slog while everybody gets all the pieces they need, the longer battery life and the cheaper batteries and the better charging, all the things you need to get into that space and to replace my daily driver.
Yeah, gradual is the watchword, right, Sam?
Yeah.
The closer we are to anything, right? If we study anything in depth, the more we realize that progress is always incremental, right? So to the rest of the world, when the Wright brothers flew, that was a breakthrough, right? There's that word breakthrough, right? To the Wright brothers, it probably wasn't. That was just one of many, many incremental steps for them getting to that point, right? And so Sam used the word gradual with EV growth, and that's exactly what we're going to see because progress is extremely gradual. I don't agree that it's or we at CARLAB don't agree that it's an infrastructure problem. It's not. For reasons that Sam cited, if I field charge with an EV, I'm basically paying gasoline level prices per mile. There's no business case for EV charging stations outside of the home or the workplace. So if we want to have a realistic look at the EV market, let's admit that the EV market is one that's dependent on home charging and or workplace charging. All of this discussion, which, by the way, OEMs love to have around infrastructure, that's all red herring. And it's very intentional. Because as long as I have a scapegoat as an EV for why I can't hit those numbers, I have a chance of weaseling my way out of the ZEV mandate. because the ZEV mandate is a noose around the neck of every OE, and every year it gets a little tighter. To Sam's point, forcing them to sell units that aren't profitable. But as long as I can always point to an external boogeyman as the problem, particularly if the external boogeyman is something that I could shoulder government with. Well, I could sell more EVs if only the government would help me with the infrastructure. It's a total load of bull. I never met 10 EV owners, experienced owners, who ever field charge except when they absolutely have to. They're not interested in it. There's no economics for it. It's a pain in their rumps, right? Field charging is a total red herring, right? So anytime you have an OE say, well, we need the infrastructure, just substitute, hey, we can't hit our numbers and we're looking to put the monkey on someone else's back. That's all. Any discussion of infrastructure is obfuscation, politely, okay? Now, what's our growth going to be? Look at the California ZEV mandate and the states that follow it. That will be exactly the EV sales forecast, gentlemen, because no OE will make an OE unless they're forced to, because they lose money. So how many are they going to be forced to make? Read the ZEV mandate. That's how many they'll make.
Just like California did 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay, we got the point. Here's the counterpoint. But I agree with you guys. I think it's going to be gradual. But I think last month EV sales in the U.S. broke 3% market share for the first time. Still very small numbers. You know, if you look at companies like Toyota and Honda, they're projecting 15% around 2030. So let's just assume for the moment they're right. That's 5 times what we're doing right now. So on a percentage basis, I think we're going to see amazing growth in EVs. But I do agree with you guys, it's going to stall out. But so far, all we've had have been, with the exception of Tesla, compliance cars. Nobody until very recently, like the Mach-E, has a traditional automaker put a serious EV out on the road, e-tron 2. So now we're going to start to see real EVs. And Eric, I used to agree with you that they were not going to make money, but I missed the fact that the governments around the world were going to step up and offer pretty big incentives for consumers to buy these cars. So the OEMs can put an MSRP on it where they can make money and let the government eat the loss. Now, how long those subsidies stay in place are going to be a real question mark. Now, to complete my counterpoint here, I come back to the commercial market. That is the one place where I think EVs have got a great chance of success.
And that's where the F-150 Lightning is going to go, and they're going to do very well there. For precisely the reason that we already talked about, which is Ford is exceptionally good at fleet. And in fleets, what we call honeybees, or vehicles that are returned to base. They leave, they go out for the day, and they return to base. Battery electric F-150s will be great for that, and that'll help Ford a lot meet their ZEV mandate. John, are they going to make money on those? No.
Not at a $40,000 base price.
Nope.
Now with the crew cab ones at $52,000, yeah, I think they can make some money there.
Break even, maybe. It's not the point. If I'm Ford and I make 10 grand in F-Series, but my overall volume is threatened by non-ZEV compliance, I'm going to do unnatural things, right? Ford already did an unnatural thing for Cafe some years ago when they switched building their body systems from steel to aluminum. That cost them at least $1,000 a unit. Why did they do it? So they can still sell the volumes that they sell. So why is Ford going to do an electric F-Series? So that they can stay in ZEV compliance and continue to sell 750,000 ICE F-Series that make $10,000 a piece. It's a compliance move. It's a brilliant compliance move, but it's a compliance move. Aluminum was a brilliant compliance move, but don't stand at a podium and tell me, right? And they're going to anyway, and it's fine because there's endless precedent. Every maker says this EV is going to be different. We're gonna make money on this one. For 25 years, we've had liars at the top of car companies standing in front of podiums telling us this is going to be the EV that's going to make money.
In order to sell an EV and make money on it, you have to sell something other than an EV. Like Tesla isn't selling electric cars; they're selling Teslas.
Yes, yet they don't make money either, Sam.
No, that you're right on that one. But in order to make money, you're going to have to sell something other than an EV. It's going to have.
You got to sell these north of $100,000 a piece. I'm
selling Mustangs. The Mustang Mach-E is a Mustang. It happens to be electric. I'm selling a Tesla, which is a sports car. It happens to be electric. It's just not going to. You can't sell it and say we've got a better electric vehicle. No, I need a reason to buy that vehicle, something other than it being electric.
Yeah, John, you mentioned Toyota and their forecast. Nobody in the world smarter about the electric vehicle than Toyota, maybe GM in terms of experience, right? Toyota is exceedingly experienced with this. If Toyota says 15% by that date, I think that's probably a rational forecast, but this is going to be horses for courses. Some are going to be fleet because it makes sense. Sam, to your point, a lot want to be luxury and very expensive high performance vehicles because I can bury the cost of a $20,000 battery in a $100,000 car much easier than I can bury it in, John, what you called a compliance car like a Leaf, right? So we're not anti-EV any more than we'd be anti-diesel or anti-turbocharging or anti-10-speed gearbox or anti-CVT. Those are all technologies that when used appropriately work well for certain buyers in certain segments. Our problem societally is we're always looking for a single silver bullet. EVs are never going to be that, ever. They're a natural maybe 15% of the market. Even after the gradual progress that Sam talked about happens, they really want to be luxury vehicles.
Okay, we got to take another quick commercial break here, and we'll be right back. Gary's got, I think, a few more questions for us to answer.
The world is changing at an ever-increasing pace. No matter what the mode of transportation, there is always the need for an efficient propulsion system. And that's exactly what BorgWarner has been doing since the earliest days of the automotive industry. We create innovative mobility technologies that reduce energy consumption and emissions while improving performance. Our proven track record has made us an industry leader in forward-looking propulsion solutions for combustion, hybrid, and electric vehicles.
And we're back.
Boy, before we got to that last bit where you guys were talking about bearing the cost of the battery in the $100,000 car, I was beginning to think the Guang had a great future for it because it has limited range, right? And you could just go back and forth. To your honeybee analogy there, Eric. I mean, I was thinking, man, this is ready to go. Great guns. It
could sure just wasn't my use of the word burying.
Yeah, it could have been that. Okay, so just to conclude, so basically what I took away from that discussion was the fact that basically you guys are saying there will never be a hockey stick shape in terms of the market for EVs. Am I correct in that conclusion? Sam,
I don't see one. Do you?
There's a point where the momentum will snowball enough, but it's not the hockey stick that everybody's predicting, like when battery parity comes in play and suddenly it's just going to take off. There's going to be a snowball effect when we build enough electric vehicles, and that the cost of building those electric vehicles overtakes the cost of making EV or ICEs. And so once that occurs, you could potentially have that growth that would take over. But to Eric's point, you're going to need a lot more development in the EVs. We've had 130 years of ICE development, and we've had basically 20 years of EV development.
Sam, I would heartily disagree there and remind you that the first motor cars were mostly EVs.
Oh, I'm not denying that part.
The first land speed record car was an EV. And right here in California where I sit, in 1916 and 17, EVs far outnumbered gasoline-powered vehicles.
EVs and steam engines outsold gasoline-powered vehicles until 1910. I understand that. I sit on the board of the museum that specializes in electric vehicles. But the problem is we've had a century of where they haven't invested in EVs. They haven't really spent a lot of time. We were making lead-acid electric vehicles in the 90s. So there hasn't been a lot of development in EVs until the last 20 years or so.
But Sam, I would argue
up.
EVs don't need development. Look, guys, the electric motor is an industrially mature product, and electric motors are fabulous. They're 97% efficient, right? The gearboxes are the gearboxes. So when we talk about the electric vehicle and say it needs development, that again is bullshit, just like the red herring of infrastructure. It's not electric vehicles that need development, it's batteries that need development. The batteries are the elephant in the room, and batteries didn't stop development when EVs went out of style in 1918. Panasonic, LG Chem, and others make billions of batteries a year and have vast R&D budgets. So battery technology never stopped being developed. It's just very mature. And the reason EVs don't work well is because batteries are, let's say it, expensive, huge, right? And very heavy, and don't store very much energy for all of that. And that isn't going to change because batteries are something one of the fathers of our country called Benjamin Franklin was already at work on, right? This is very old technology. And if what we're waiting for is a battery breakthrough, I think John and Gary's next ad break will be for swampland.
Well, here, look, I think I agree with what you're saying, Eric. I don't think we're going to get a battery breakthrough, maybe the solid state, but we are going to see a dramatic reduction in the cost of the batteries. And
Why?
I do believe that we're going to see it match the cost of ICE internal combustion engines. Whether that triggers a hockey stick or not, it remains to be seen in the United States. But I would say China's already starting to get on the hockey stick move. Europe might be there as well. Now, so much of that is being promulgated by cities in Europe who are saying, hey, if you got an internal combustion engine, you can't even come into the city center.
Yeah.
And you've got other countries that are saying, we're going to ban the internal combustion engine. So if it's left to pure market forces, like we're more or less doing in the United States, I would agree with you guys. But there's a political calculation in here that I think is maybe not going to have us convert 100% to all EVs by 2035, but it's going to happen.
It is a political question, and probably rather than Sam and I, those guests need to be political scientists, I suppose, John. I mean, the challenge that we have in North America, though, is this: even if we had the political will to keep subsidizing or to subsidize at a much greater level, John, the challenge that we're going to have is, unfortunately, probably, and I say this even though I'm in the industry, America is so reliant on the automobile that we can't do things like Europe's doing. Europe has enough other mass transit, right, in many forms that they can say, hey, no more bringing your ICE into town. If we said no more bringing your ICE into town in North America, those towns would be full of tumbleweeds in 3 weeks because there's no other way to get in and out. After World War II, we hung everything on the automobile, and it's going to be extremely hard now to say we're going to subsidize every EV at $10,000 to $20,000 a copy, or we're not going to let you drive one. I don't think we can afford either.
Following World War II, when we built all the interstates, Americans decided they could drive anywhere they wanted to in a day.
Yeah.
And so you can't do that in an EV.
And there's no alternative, Sam.
Right. No.
We've dismantled our railroads.
Right. And nobody in America wants to take the railroad. They want to get in their personal car with their 3 relatives and drive from New York to California this afternoon. You can't do that in an EV because it's going to take you 8 hours each time to stop and recharge every 400 miles.
All right, let me switch this just maybe a hair, Okay, so Eric, you mentioned earlier, the boomers who will be rolling around in golf carts very soon in their gated communities and
a lot of them for sure. That's a big market, Gary.
Okay, but I want to talk about another perhaps bigger market, which would be the Gen Y, which is basically the people who were born between 1981 and 94, which will become the dominant part of the market, and they're fairly wealthy as well.
Probably in this decade, Gary, they become the biggest buying group.
So my question is that, okay, so we're looking at the car market in terms of, through the eyes of how it has historically been, post World War II. I'm wondering whether Gen Y might not be looking at vehicles in an entirely different way, that maybe they'd be completely happy paying for subscriptions for OTAs. Maybe they'd be completely happy not owning a car. Maybe they're completely happy with, 17 horsepower motor and a 75-mile range. Maybe they'd be completely happy with all of these things we're dissing. I mean, is that possible?
Or were you happy with your parents' car? Were your parents happy with whatever they got around in? It doesn't work that way. We progress every generation, and I'm looking at the cars parked in my driveway, and my kids have more powerful cars than I do, and definitely more powerful cars than I grew up with. My first car had 84 horsepower. The lowest power car in my driveway is 150, and it's my daughter's car, and so they're growing up in a time where they want what they already have and better. And so their phones have to be better. Their cars have to be better. They're not going to go back to a 17 horsepower electric vehicle anytime soon. 84 horsepower for me was a lot at the time. And, I wouldn't go back there today.
That's right. There is a little bit less interest in owning, Gary, because a lot of the products that are so top of mind for Gen Y are on more or less a subscription basis. But what we've been seeing, interestingly, with Gen Y is they were very late to household formation, right? They're the most educated generation ever. And that educated population is predominantly women, right? Who are therefore dating, mating, and procreating later, right? Education does that worldwide. When women are educated, they have fewer children and later, which has led to later household formation for Gen Y. So what we saw was a lot of delay with Gen Y, economic pressure, student debt, getting married later, having kids later. All of that led to less consumption of new vehicles. But to both your guys' point, Gen Y is going to become the biggest generation now in vehicle dealerships, right? Or for providers of transportation. And that's precisely because even though they did it late, they're forming households, they're buying residences, right? And they're having kids. And in North America, when you do that, there's no other way to get around other than a private vehicle. So they're going to figure very large now in the next 10 years in the new vehicle market, precisely because everything they were postponing is now really starting to happen. And numerically, they're now a bigger generation than the boomers. So they're going to impact the market in really big ways. They'll want more leasing. They will be willing to pay for some more things in subscription terms. But to Sam's point, the vehicles don't get to go backwards. They're expecting more content, more safety, more ADAS, more space, right? And yes, Sam, more power. Absolutely. Look at Radwood, guys. Enthusiasm for vehicles among youth isn't dead. It's just changed.
Yeah, when people said that the young people don't want to buy cars, no, they want to buy cars. They're just going to come a little later. Like you said, everything has been delayed on them. I look at the kids today who have their friends groups on phones. They're just talking to each other on phones. They're not dating as much. They're not going anywhere because they can see each other on FaceTime or what have you. So they don't have the need to go around. Once they get to 20, 25 years old, they're going to realize they need to get somewhere. They need to go to the bar. They need to take kids somewhere. They need to do whatever. They're going to need that transportation that they had been pushing off for years. They will buy cars. It's 16 years old isn't the line anymore. It's now 20 or 25.
Yeah, very well said. Very well said.
Eric, from what you're describing, I was beginning to think that perhaps the minivan's going to have a big comeback.
Gary, what an interesting question, right? Like, if every generation has its family vehicle, to Sam's point, right? What is Gen Y's family vehicle going to be? Very interesting. So far, that is still crossovers and utilities, interestingly. But man, that is the big question. Every OEM asks it often. Is there going to be a new body style that will be the new darling for forming families for this new generation? Maybe this is the first generation that kind of repeats. If for Gen X, it was utility vehicles, right, when they formed families, it looks like for Gen Y, it's utility vehicles again, which is odd because that's not usually the way it goes.
So is the question that the Gen Y people have more about architecture than it is about powertrain?
Nobody cares what powers it, but boy, they want it to be fast, huh, Sam?
Oh yeah, no, it's how it runs. How many people have looked under a hood of any vehicle lately? You know, it takes our generation to say, oh, that's got a V8, or oh, that's a turbo 6. That's great. They don't care. You know, my son is an enthusiast, so he cares that his Saab is turbocharged. But other than that, you know, nobody really cares what's under the hood anymore. V8s are passe. As long as it gets you from point A to point B, does it quickly, relatively fuel efficiently, I don't care what's under that hood.
Yeah,
there's too much stuff underneath there anyway. You can't see the engine anyway.
And that includes EVs. In the end, EV is going to be a powertrain type, right? And if electric power is a better solution for some vehicle types, then people will be fine with that, right?
I think that's the answer for exotics. I think going forward, people don't drive a 911 GT3 cross country, but they do want the performance, and Porsche doesn't want to pay the carbon credits. So if you make it an EV, it seems like the perfect fit in that case. It's the powertrain you want. It's the acceleration you want. What better way to move the price of the battery across?
If Gen Y has been the most accepting, in compliments of Gen Y has been the most accepting generation of diversity ever. In terms of ethnicity, cultural background, lifestyle, sexuality, gender identification, Gen Y is truly the most egalitarian generation ever. We see that reflected in their vehicle taste. They with powertrain, they would accept it all, right?
And Eric, we got a comment here from the chat room. Jay says, and you know what Gen Y wants, Eric? EVs, specifically Teslas.
Well, look, who doesn't want a car that is so nice it's being sold for $50,000 below cost? That's an attractive proposition. Consumers aren't dumb.
But do they want it because it's an EV? Do they want it because it's a Tesla?
They want it because it looks sexy, it's relatively roomy, it's got a luxurious interior, and it's fast.
And I drive a Tesla.
Yeah, well, that's
this generation's BMW.
Vehicle. Look, the argument that Teslas are proof that EVs are attractive, right, is curious to me because somehow that didn't apply for Leafs. So,
yeah, but the Leaf is not it's not nearly as good a car as a Tesla is.
I know, John,
it was
but
a
that's the
compliance
point.
car.
When you build a really good car, it's attractive to people. Teslas aren't attractive because they're EV. That's giving no credit to Tesla. They're attractive because they look sexy, right? They're luxurious. They run like a raped ape, right? And they get you access to the carpool lane.
I don't know. I agree with all that, but I do believe there is, especially amongst Gen Y, a real keen interest in getting an electric car. They really, truly do want that. Now, they'll start to run into the reality of what you're talking about, i.e., if you charge at home, no problem, provided you don't live in an apartment or something like that where you are not able to charge at home overnight. And then, as you call it, field charging, once you go out there, you're paying easily twice, 3 times what you're going to pay at home. And then you start to run into some of the reality too. If you live in the snow belt, you're going to lose tremendous range once it starts to get cold. Right. So there's tremendous interest. You know, was it JD Power that just did the survey that found out that 20% of the people who buy an EV go back to an IC? So, I mean,
All right,
you
John,
can state that the other way.
That was University of California, Davis that did the study, and basically they found it was that they people love the car, but the problem was, and Eric's ears are going to get all red, and he's going to get it was the infrastructure that they were having problems charging it. But again, those people in that study didn't go back to ICEs because they thought that it was a superior vehicle. It was
Right.
vehicle extraneous.
No, great point.
No. But
Great point.
Eric points out that it costs more to
SFR.
charge.
Single family residence.
But my
SFR.
point is, I do believe Gen Y wants electric. I mean, talk to any of them. They're very keenly interested in getting an electric car. Now, let's see how that plays out over time. But right now, I think if they have the opportunity to go electric, that's how they're going to go.
John, I don't disagree at all. I mean, electric vehicles are attractive, right? They're attractive because there's low NVH. They're attractive because they're fast. They're attractive because the acceleration that they have is right where Americans want it. And they're attractive because I can charge at home and not have to visit a gas station. But I was interjecting this acronym a moment ago, SFR, single family residence. It takes an SFR to make an EV work. And that, Gary, is what that University of Davis study was essentially saying. People complaining about the infrastructure, the people that need infrastructure are the people that aren't in SFRs. If you're in a single family residence with a climate controlled, secure garage, an EV makes a lot of sense to you, right? Particularly right now, EVs are still, most of them, if I took all the subsidization, the average EV today between shareholder subsidization, federal, state highway and federal highway gas tax not paid, plus special access, on average, subsidization is more than $30,000 a unit. Why wouldn't that be attractive to consumers? Right? Vehicles that are worth $30,000 more than I'm having to pay, that's exceedingly attractive. So don't confuse demand with business case, John.
All right. I want another subject, and then this will be the last one because I think we're going to start it's a good thing we're not in the same room because it might be violent in here.
Oh no,
right.
it's great stuff.
Okay, so the other thing that OEMs and suppliers are investing millions and millions and millions of dollars into is autonomous driving. So, Eric, Sam, are we going to see autonomous capability in numbers, in volume, in not in these boomer retirement villages where people are rolling around? Is this an investment that is worthy of being made, or is this sort of another variation of Eric, as you've described, electric vehicles?
No, if I come off as a Luddite on EVs, let me flip that. Consumers desperately want autonomy. They love everything about it, right? They already enjoy it in airplanes where somebody else or maybe nobody else flies the plane for them, right? They're very happy to do other things. Even Porsche owners will be quite happy to have their 911 driven in Atlanta traffic during their Monday morning commute by a self-driving system. So when we talk to consumers of any generation, and by the way, particularly boomers who don't want to lose their license like mom did, right? The idea of systems that will drive the car, insanely attractive. And when we have something that's that attractive to consumers and we're making incremental progress on, which is called ADAS, man, is it coming. It's inevitable. It's attractive, it's inevitable. And you know what? When consumers get it offered to them on cars, they pay. That's why average transaction price is up. Every car maker right now is packaging more and more ADAS in every vehicle in every segment because consumers want it. Consumers are like, I'll take that. I'd like that. Lane keep assist, I'd like it. Smart cruise control, I'd like it. Self park, I'd like it.
Yeah, like you said, every generation has their different reasons for wanting
Yeah.
it. Young people may not want to drive their own car, but they need to get from place to place. Like you said, as you get older, you're afraid that somebody's going to take your license away or your car keys away from you. And to have that freedom at 80, 90, 100 years old to be able to go shopping or go wherever, that's really nice to have. The problem is that the technology is going to take a long time to get to level 5 to everybody. In order for it to be affordable, to be able to not crash as much as a human being would, level 5 has to, the way we designed these ideas before was that there was a wire in the road or some other system that talked to each other. These things have to be able to work with people driving cars at the same time, because nobody's going to flip a switch and say all level 5 cars now so they can talk to each other and everything. We're going to have to do this so that these vehicles are so good that they can deal with human error from other vehicles. They can deal with people walking out in the street. They can deal with everything else that comes associated with driving a car. When I talk to people about autonomous vehicles, like, drive your car and realize all the little things that you do that you don't realize you do while you're driving a car. Now I have to teach a computer to do all that stuff that isn't just easily say, oh, just follow the lines and stop at the intersections. You need a lot more than that. I need to be able to know that the tire turning a little bit on this car means he's coming into my lane. I have to be ready for that. These are things that you can't just automatically program into a vehicle. They have to realize these from real world access.
All right.
Hallelujah. Amen.
All right. So 2 questions to you two, because you both mentioned this about people being concerned about getting their licenses lifted. But, if somebody just calls up or, calls up, notice this old tech. I'm using this for people who are not watching this. They're seeing me do a old phone. Yeah, there you go, Sam. Exactly right.
Sam, you had props, didn't you?
Yes. All right. So I get the Waymo vehicle to come to pick me up to take me to wherever. Okay. And it's doing all these things. I don't need a driver's license for that. Doesn't matter to me. It's just like that airplane. It's flying me someplace. It's taking me someplace. So I don't need to have the license. So that's irrelevant. But here's my question to you guys. When are we going to see this? I mean, not will we see it. When will we see this?
I stole this line from someone who's way smarter than me in Silicon Valley, Gary. Okay. I was at a Chatham House Rules conference, so I'm not allowed to quote him, which is too bad because it's brilliant. He said the formula for when autonomy is truly at true level 5 is this: CY plus 20, calendar year plus 20.
Oh, I thought you meant cover your ass plus 20.
Which is basically the same thing, because it's never going to happen if it's CY plus 20.
Fill in calendar year and add 20. And that's when we have true level 5 for all the reasons Sam stated. You know what's so funny? It's not just body language, right? It's even this. If you had a car, and we do it all the time in California and Phoenix and Miami, vehicles with windows that are so tinted you can't see the driver. But there's still body language. You come to a 4-way stop. If that vehicle arrived with pitch, right? There was dive in it. So it arrived at the stop, right? Hot. It came in hot, right? And then you saw it bounce back up on the springs. You are more likely as a driver to assume that thing is going to go across the intersection now than the vehicle that came in with no dive, with no pitch. In other words, we're reading body language, not just on occupants' faces, which we are to Sam's point, or drivers' faces. We're reading it from the vehicle. If the vehicle's red, it's more likely to run out in front of us than if it's brown. And we can go on and on and on. If it's a Chrysler product and the yellow protectant stickers are still on the outer lower lips of the front air down, he's more likely to cut in front of me. Right? This is vehicle body language. My gosh, guys, how do we teach sensors to do this? Sam, we can, but it's going to take an awfully long time.
Yeah. But see, you guys are talking level 5, and I would agree with everything that you're saying when it comes to level 5. But right now we're just on the verge of, well, we've got things like Super Cruise and, full self-driving from Tesla. And we've got, what does Ford call it? Blue Cruise, I think. And so you've got pretty good hands-free driving in those. Well, maybe not on the Tesla. You're supposed to keep your hands on the wheel, but the other two, you can keep your hands off. Next step is going to be traffic jam assist, which some have, but we're on the verge of a car being able to go 30, 40 miles an hour in stop and go traffic, and you don't have to do anything. The car is going to do everything, even including cars cutting in front of you. Then we get to level 4, whereas in a geofenced area, boom, you can do whatever you want. The car is going to drive it. And I'd say we're going to have that at retail level before this decade is out. Now,
I think you're right,
John. Pardon?
I think you're right.
Yeah, and it's going to come in the luxury end, and it's going to be expensive to start, and it'll probably be a subscription service, that's going to cost you $4,500 a year, but that's where it's going to come in. So I think autonomy has already started. There's already companies like May Mobility and Beep that are running specific routes at low speeds. Autonomy, you probably see the ads on television. Domino's Pizza delivering pizzas with an autonomous neuro vehicle. So I'm arguing autonomy is already here, and we're just going to see the ability added every single year. We're going to see a dramatic improvement in it every single year. Level 5, that's not this decade. Maybe it's not even the next decade. But
your level 4 requires geofencing. So that geofencing could be mapped highways. It limits the number of interactions that Eric and I are talking about where, somebody's going to make a right turn. Well, no one's going to make a right turn on an interstate. They're going to move into your lane. So you have limited things that you have to worry about even at level 4. Level 5 has to take into consideration everything and it has to be able to go everywhere.
Everywhere. And that's what I'm saying. That's going to take a while to go. But, I keep pointing out that's how cell phones started. When they first came out, they were in business districts and cities. Then you could use it at the airport. Then you could use it on the highway going from the business district to the airport. Now you can go anywhere you want and you've got cell phone coverage. Same thing's going to happen.
Except the same places that you've had dead zones for 10 years.
Yeah, but nobody lives there. So what I'm saying is that the geofences are going to keep spreading farther and farther apart from where they're from Maine to California and Montana to Texas.
So basically, John, are you talking about this will purely be an interstate play, or looking at Southern California where Eric is, where there is lots of congestion in the city center? I mean, is that going to be a geofenced area?
Look, it's first going to start, I believe, where there's heavy traffic. And if it's stop and go, I mean, that's pretty easy for autonomous systems to do today.
It is, and John, that's the one that consumers want really more than anything, right?
Absolutely.
I talked about the Porsche driver, the 911 driver, commuting in and out of Atlanta, which has super heavy traffic now.
Sure.
And that's exceedingly attractive to that attorney. She's going to sit in her 911 and she might take it to a track day once a month. But the idea that thing can handle the stop and go, right, on the way in and out of the city, right, to the law office, that is fantastically attractive. And John, we are getting toward that. And I don't think there's any consumer resistance at all. Silly surveys notwithstanding. Of course, consumers always go, well, I'm not sure it'll work. Those are dumb surveys, right? I could have done the same surveys in the 70s about ABS. Do you want ABS? Well, I don't know. I'm not sure it'll work. I mean, why do we bother taking those sorts of surveys? We just found out that only 50% of consumers would trust autonomy when it gets here. Yeah, well, no shit. It's not here yet. Right? Of course, right? That's irrelevant. They want it. John, to your point, level 3's here now. 3.5's coming, 4's coming. It'll be adopted like that. It'll be trickle down from luxury onward. But Sam nailed it. To get to true level 5, wow, man. I mean, some of us will be toes north by then.
I'm looking forward to level 5 because I want all those bad drivers off the road so I can drive to work.
They'll
That's
still be
right.
on the road in legacy vehicles, Sam.
Look, we're all enthusiasts, and we don't like driving in stop and go traffic, and that's been my argument in favor of autonomous vehicles anyway. It's going to let all us enthusiasts go around them and drive like hell.
You drive an automatic, don't you?
Me? No.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
All right, guys,
Okay.
we've gone way over on this, so I think we ought to wrap it up. But that's just
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, no, you're right. But Sam Fiorani, AutoForecast Solutions, Eric Noble, the CARLAB. Thanks for coming on. This has been a great
Yeah, we got to do this
discussion.
more often. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah. This
I
has
hope
been
you guys
really
had as
Sorry
much fun as
about
we
the
did.
lack of a fireplace.
He's
Okay,
at
you
the
guys,
Improv.
take care, and we want to thank
Thank you,
everybody who's
guys.
tuned in as well.
Thanks so much.
Okay,
Cheers.
thanks, guys.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, solutions for your journey, and by Borg Warner, propulsion solutions that support a clean, energy-efficient world.
Visit our website, Autoline.tv, where you can watch us live Thursday afternoons. Get your daily fix with Autoline Daily and in-depth analysis and interviews with Autoline This Week. There's all that and much more at Autoline.tv.